Next bit is test case organization and tracking. So one consideration that you should take into account when creating the test case document is how the information will be organized and tracked. So the information organization we have seen in the previous video. So think about the questions that a tester or a test team should be able to answer. So some of the questionnaires are: which test case do you plan to run? Then how many test cases do you plan to run? How long will it take to run them? So the target will be set in front of you, that if 100 test cases are given to you, how many the test cases you are going to run on daily basis, like that. So can you pick and choose test suits, like groups of related test cases to run on a particular feature or areas of a software? Then when you run the cases, will you be able to record which ones pass and which one fails? Then of the ones that failed, which ones also failed the last time you ran them? Then what percentage of the test of the cases passed the last time you ran them? Then some sort of the process needs to be in place that allows you to manage your test cases and track the results of running them. So there are essentially four possible systems. So the first is in your head. So don't even consider this one. Even for the simplest project, unless you are testing software for your own personal use and have no reason to track your testing, you just can't do it. The idea should be in your mind, in your head. Then comes paper or the documents. It is possible to manage the test cases for very small projects on paper. Tables, charts of checklists have been used effectively. They are obviously a weak method for organizing and searching the data, but they do offer one very important positive: a written checklist that includes a tester's initials or signature denoting that tests were run is excellent proof in a court of law that testing was performed. So if after some days of launching of the product, if somebody says that these test cases were not run properly, or some this kind of issues if arise, then the paper or the document with signed proof will be with you. So this should be retained properly. Then comes the spreadsheet. A popular and very workable method of tracking the test cases is by using a spreadsheet. Then figure I have not taken over here, so it is showing the example. So by keeping all the details of the test cases in one place, a spreadsheet can provide at a glance view of your testing status. So they are easy to use, relatively easy to set up, and provide good tracking and proof of testing. So here you are maintaining the number of test case with their title, then who has performed a particular test case, on which date, or at what time, what was the previous result, it was pass or fail, or all these details will be kept in that particular spreadsheet. So at a glance view will give you exact idea of the say, or we can say that a daily report kind of thing will be kept into your storage. Then comes the custom database. So the ideal method for tracking test case is to use a test case management tool. So a database programmed specifically to handle the test cases. So many commercially available applications are set up to perform just this specific task. So some of the softwares are available in market through which you can track the record of the number of test cases that you have run, their result, pass or fail, or whatever the things that you want to store. Then coming to the next bit, that is reporting bugs and getting your bugs fixed. So despite your best efforts at planning and executing your tests, not all the bugs you find will be fixed. Okay, it is not the condition that you have given say 10 bugs, but all of them will not be fixed. Some of them with having higher priority, higher severity, those only will be traced on a higher basis. So some may be dismissed completely and other may be deferred or postponed for fixing in a subsequent releases of the software. So if any bug is there in this particular version, say for example 1.5 version is having some kind of bugs, but you will not find that bug in the next release, say for example 1.7. Okay, so time being in 1.5 release it will be skipped, but it will be taken into consideration for the next fix or next version of the software. So the reason for not fixing a bug is, the first is there is not enough time. So every project always has too many software features, too few people to code and test them. So and not even not enough room left in the schedule to finish. So if you are giving maximum time on coding or designing phase, so you will be getting very less time for testing purpose. So many of the bugs will remain as it is. You are not getting enough time to fix them all. Then comes, it's really not a bug. Okay, this could be the reason. So maybe you have heard the phrase, it's not a bug, it's a feature. Okay, so it's not uncommon for misunderstandings, test errors or specification changes to result in would be bugs being dismissed as a feature. Okay, so if any kind of functionality, if any type of bug you are finding, then the team may say this is the feature and that bug could be dismissed. Next is, it is too risky to fix. Okay, so you might make a bug fix that causes other bugs to appear. So under the pressure to release the product under a tight schedule, it might be too risky to change the software. So it may be better to leave in the known bug to avoid the risk of creating new or unknown ones. So there may be chances like in your final year project or such kind of rescue timings. If you are going to launch your product tomorrow and if you are finding any kind of severe bug today, so you are not going to change your code at this moment of time. Okay, so there may be chances if you are changing some code at this moment of time but it is not giving proper output, so you will not be able to give proper output tomorrow at the time of release or at the time of examination. So you may say it is too risky to fix it at this moment of time, then it is just not worth it. So bugs that would occur infrequently or appear in a little used features may be dismissed. So bugs that have workarounds, ways that a user can prevent or avoid the bug, often are not fixed. It all comes down to a business decision based on risk. So some spelling mistakes are there in the help part, so that kind of things can be skipped because at time being the help part is not that much important to release the software. Okay, so that type of bugs may be said under it's just not worth it. Okay, and after this insufficient bug reporting, so the tester did not make a strong enough case that a particular bug should be fixed. So as a result, the bug was misunderstood as not being a bug. So it is a good practice of a good tester that if you are finding any kind of bug, if you are filing your bug, so you have to trace that particular bug time to time. If it is having higher severity, then you should open it again and again on a weekly basis. You should track that particular bug again and again. Why? Otherwise, the people from development team will get the ineffectiveness of that particular bug. So you should be in a tracing mode for the bugs that you have filed. Then some fundamental principles for reporting the bugs are report the bugs as soon as possible. The first is report the bugs as soon as possible. So the earlier you find a bug, the more time that remains in a schedule to get it fixed. So it is given in the diagram. So if you are filing the bug at the project start time, okay, then if the bug is serious, so at the end of the project the chances of serious bug getting fixed will be less as compared to the minor bugs. If you are filing the minor bugs at the start of the projects, maximum of the minor bugs will be fixed till the end of the project. So it is shown in this particular graph. Then effectively describe the bugs. So suppose that you were a programmer and received the following bug report from a tester. So it is given over here. Whenever I type a bunch of random characters in a login box, the software starts to do varied stuff. Okay, so how would you even begin to fix this bug without knowing what the random characters were, how big a bunch is, and what kind of weird stuff was happening? So the effective bug description would be minimal. Okay, so it explains just the facts and the details necessary to demonstrate and describe the bug. Then again, it should be singular, so there should be only one bug per report. Okay, one bug per report. You are writing one report and it is including 2, 3, 4 bugs, so this should not be the case. One report, one bug should be there. Then obvious and general. A bug described with numerous complex convoluted steps that shows a very specific instance of a bug is less likely to get fixed than one described with easily performed state that shows the bug to be very general and readily seen by the user. And again, it should be reproducible. Means, to be taken seriously, a bug report must show the bug to be reproducible following a predefined set of steps will cause the software to achieve the same state and the bug to occur again. Fine. Then again, it should be non-judgmental in reporting bugs. Bug reports can be viewed by the programmers and others on the development teams as a tester's report card on their work, so they need to be non-judgmental, non-personal, and non-inflammatory. Bug reports should be written against the product, not the person, and state only the facts. Then no gloating, no grandstanding, no personalizing, no egos, no accusations should be there in your bug report. Okay, so maybe the case ki your friend is there, will not, okay, first case we will see that your one friend is there in the development team and you are finding a very severe bug, but at the time of filing that bug you have given a lower priority or low severity at that time, so it should not be personal or something. The person who is like your enemy, or not exactly enemy, but the person with whom you are not in handshaking mode in proper. Okay, so you are filing the bugs on the work that he has done in a very harsh way, giving, if the bug is minor one, but still giving the highest priority, highest severity. So this should not be the condition. It should be non-judgmental in reporting the bugs. Okay, so and after this, follow up on your bug reports. So one thing worse than not finding an important bug is finding a bug, reporting it, and then forgetting about it or losing the track of it. So just now I have discussed that you should track the bug filed by you people. From the moment you find a bug, it's your responsibility to make sure that it is reported properly and given the attention that it needs to be addressed. A good tester finds and logs lots of bugs, but a great tester finds and logs lots of bugs but also continues to monitor them through the process of getting them fixed. Okay, so next bit is isolating and reproducing the bugs. So isolating and reproducing bugs is where you get to put on your detective hat and try to figure out exactly what the steps are to narrow down the problem. Some testers are naturally good at isolating and reproducing the bugs. They can discover a bug and very quickly narrow down the specific steps and conditions that cause the problem. For others, this skill comes with practice after finding and reporting many different types of bugs. So, to be an effective software tester, though these are the skills that you are near to master, so take every opportunity you can work at isolating and reproducing the bugs. A few tips and tricks will give you a good start if you find a bug that seems to take numerous steps to reproduce or can't seem to be reproduced at all. So first is, don't take anything for granted. So keep notes of everything you do, every step, every pause, everything. It's easy to leave out a step or add one unintentionally. Have a coworker watch you try the test case. Use keystroke and mouse recording programs so that you can record and play back your steps exactly. Use a video camera to record your test session if necessary. So this will be needed mainly at the time of performing the ad hoc testing. You are checking your product in on ad hoc basis, and at some moment of time you are finding a particular bug, but to come to that particular point of a bug, what procedure you have followed you are forgetting. So this should not be the case. You should go with a person as your co-worker or something like video camera or the recorder which will record the keystrokes and mouse recording, which will be having keystroke and mouse recording facility with you. Okay, then look for time dependent and race condition problems. So does this bug occur only at a certain time of a day? Maybe it depends on how quickly you enter the data or the fact that you are saving data to a slower floppy instead of a fast hard drive. Or was the network busy when you saw the bug? Try your test case on slower or faster hardware. Think about the timing. Okay, so there may be chances this case might be discussed in the classroom, like you are working for a particular project which is network based, and it is showing the lower speed at, say for example, 12 Indian Standard Time to, say for example, 5 o'clock in the evening as per the Indian Standard Time. Okay, so why it happens? Like for 12 to 5 from our side, the working time from the US or UK client will again start. So at that time the traffic will be more and more, you will be getting lower performance. And vice versa, if you are working in the night time, so you may have experienced this, like you are downloading many of the films in the night. Why so? Because network traffic in the night time, that is after 12 o'clock to up to 7 o'clock in the morning, you many of the users of the network will be lowered down. Okay, so that is why you will be getting faster and faster speed at the time of downloading the movies. Okay, so how these things, number of peers, number of nodes, and your network traffic, how it affects, all these should be studied properly. Then comes white box issues of boundary condition bugs, memory leaks, and data overflows can be slow to reveal themselves. You might perform a test that caused data to be overwritten, but you will not know it until you try to use that data, maybe in later test. Bugs that don't appear after a reboot but only after running other tests are usually in this category. If this happens, look at the previous tests you have run, and maybe by using some dynamic white box testing, techniques to see if the bug has gone unnoticed. Then state the bugs show up only in certain states of the software. So examples of state bugs would be ones that occur only the first time the software is run, or that occur only after the first time. Okay, so maybe the bug happens only after the data was saved or before any key was pressed. So state bugs may look like a time dependent or race condition problem, but you will find that time is unimportant. It's the order in which things happen, not when they happen. And then consider the resource dependencies and interactions with memory network and hardware sharing. So does the bug occur only in a busy system that is running other software and communicating with other hardware? In the end, the bug may turn out to be a rest condition, memory leak, or state bug that is aggravated by software's dependency or interaction with a resource. But looking at these influences may help you isolate it. And then finally, don't ignore the hardware. Unlike software, hardware can degrade and act unpredictably. A loose card, a bad memory chip, or an overheated CPU can cause failures that look like software bugs but really are not. Try to reproduce your bugs on different hardwares. This is especially important if you are performing configuration or compatibility testing. You will want to know if the bug shows up on one system or many. So these all points should be kept in the mind. So here we are ending with the 5th unit. Thank you very much.